Hi, my name is Connor Nagel, and for my research project, I decided to do the Aral Sea and its quick disappearance or shrinking since the 1960s. The Aral Sea is located between Kazakhstan in the north and Uzbekistan in the south, and the name roughly translates to the Sea of a Thousand Islands, as it once had nearly 1,100 islands that dotted its waters. The Aral Sea was once the fourth largest body of fresh water and once had a surface area of 26,000 square miles, or 67,300 square kilometers. Thus, it provided the region with a lucrative fishing market and prosperous towns. It began losing volume in the 1960s when engineers from the USSR diverted the Aral Sea's two feeder rivers, the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya, to irrigate crops and farmland, especially to cotton plantations in the deserts of what is modern-day Uzbekistan. The Soviets wanted to increase cotton plantation yields in order to accomplish this, they needed better irrigation as cotton is a water-intensive crop. This project they undertook cut off the inland sea from its source of water, and the systems of canals, dams, and reservoirs that the engineers built were leaky and mostly inefficient. By 1986, the Aral Sea was divided into four smaller lakes with a combined volume that was 1/10 of the lake's original size, and levels of salinity rose from approximately 10 grams per liter to often more than 100 grams per liter due to evaporation. The salinity of the rivers varies with time and place as well as through the seasons, but due to this increased evaporation, the salinity grew. A secondary effect of the reduction in the Aral Sea's overall size is the rapid exposure of the lake bed. Strong winds that blow across Central Asia pick up and deposit tens of thousands of tons of now exposed soil from the lake bed every single year. This can contribute to reduction in air quality and a reduction on crop yields of neighboring areas. By 2000, the lake had separated into the north, small Aral Sea in Kazakhstan, and the south, large Aral Sea in Uzbekistan. Here we can see this in almost all the pictures, as the North Aral Sea is the upper part, and the larger sea, which is separated, is the south in Uzbekistan. Today it can claim only about 10% of its former surface area of about 26,000 square miles, and by volume has lost roughly 167 billion gallons of water. Countries in the region, with the help of the World Bank, came together and built the Dike Coral Dam, which was finished in 2005. This dam is across a narrow stretch splitting off the North Aral Sea from the much larger Southern Aral Sea. Since completion, the water level of the North Aral Sea has risen and its salinity has decreased. By 2007, the dam had slowed drainage enough to raise the northern body by 42 meters, or 138 feet, thus allowing the reemergence of economically significant stocks of fish, which used to employ roughly 60,000 people in the early 1960s in that region. As I have already mentioned, the shrinking of the sea has some economic impacts on the region, the first of which was the loss of the lucrative fishing industry that the sea provided. The Aral Sea produced 1/6 of the Soviet Union's fishing catch per year, but with the disappearance of the sea came the death of millions of the fish and the decimation of native species populations, along with the commercial fisheries that depended upon them. Local communities were no longer able to sustain their livelihoods from local resources. And as the sea continued to shrink, dust storms arose that contained high amounts of sulfate salts left over from the sea's evaporation, as well as residues from industrial agriculture and weapons testings that had been occurring in the area. The toxic salts in the bottom of the lake and lack of nutrients in the fresh water have proven to be a challenge to natural and artificial revegetation efforts. This led to salinization and pollution of the groundwater that served as a source of drinking water for the local population groups. This pollution caused an increase in intestinal illness, an increase in infant mortality rates and developmental problems, diarrheal problems and other waterborne diseases, tuberculosis and respiratory diseases, malnutrition, liver and kidney diseases, liver and throat cancer for the local populations, as well as an increase in rodent problems. The local economy suffered severe losses from damages to agriculture, fisheries, hunting, trapping, river and sea transport, and living and working conditions due to this disappearance of water. I think it is important that the efforts to raise the water levels is still on people's minds, and we're still working towards that goal of raising the water back up to a sufficient level. The local resources that they lost are important for self-sufficiency and not having to rely on imports in order to survive. If they could regain these lost industries with the help of raising the water level, they could start to export goods, which would help to boost the economy and also create a self-sufficient environment for them to be able to live in. Thank you, and here are some sources.